Hi everyone, welcome to Flute 101, Lesson 1. This first lesson offers guidance to those of you who are in the process of choosing a flute to purchase or rent. If you are already renting or have purchased an instrument, you can skip this lesson. If not, listen up. The very first thing to consider is your child going to participate in a school band program? If so, the most important step and the first step is to consult your child's school band director, ask them what brands they prefer, and then step 2 is go to your local music store or instrument dealer and see which of those brands they have that is in your price range. Now, if you don't live near to an instrument dealer or a music store, you may visit a reputable music store online such as Flute World, Flute Center of New York, or Woodwind Brass Wind. Those are some of the top ones. As tempting as it may be, please try to resist the idea of purchasing a super cheap flute from Amazon or Walmart. Typically, any new flute that is under $100 is going to be full of problems, unfortunately. And that leads to 2 problems. First of all, you'll get a flute that won't play well. And then second of all, you'll get a flute which will break, which many music repair shops will not work on. So that's something to think about, is that many music stores will not work on a flute that is poorly made. Please remember that different flute players and different flute teachers have their own ideas about brands. So if you ask another flute teacher besides me, they may come up with some different ideas. But I have been teaching for a long time, and these are the brands that I consider to be the best for different reasons. For beginner flutes, my top 2 choices are Yamaha and Dejau. And don't worry, I will be spelling these out later in the lesson. My second choice for beginner flutes are Gemeinhardt and Armstrong. The reason for my first 2 choices is that Yamaha is a very reliable brand that needs repairs almost never. Dejau I also love because it's very easy to produce a very good initial sound. Now, for students who are wanting to purchase a more intermediate flute, my choices for those are Yamaha and Dejau again, but now we have the options of Azumi and Altus and Powell. Those are my first choices for an intermediate or step-up flute. My second choices for a step-up or intermediate flute would be Gemeinhardt, Pearl, or Jupiter. Now, what you can do when you get an intermediate flute, which are typically sold, as you can see, with holes in the keys. These are called open holes, and I will talk about these more later. You can purchase plugs to go in these holes so it's easier for beginners to cover the keys. Now, if you're looking to spend more money and purchase a very advanced or professional flute, which is handmade, my top 3 choices are Brannan, Powell, and Muramatsu. This is actually a Muramatsu. My main flute is called a Brannan, which I will teach on later further along in this course, but that is at the repair shop right now. First time in 20 years, it's a great flute. Other great choices for a professional level flute are Haynes, Miyazawa, Trevor James, Burkhart, and Sankyo. If you are overwhelmed by the prices that you might find online for these brands, it is okay to look on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or Reverb, which is another used instrument dealer. You may find a great deal. Keep in mind it's possible you may end up paying in repairs what you saved on the initial cost, but it's also possible that you'll get a great instrument. Oftentimes, however, on the flip side, when you purchase a new instrument from an instrument store, they may offer you a warranty for a few months, up to possibly even a year, that covers all repairs. Here are some terms that you might need to know while you are looking for a new flute. As I mentioned earlier, this style of flute is called an open hole flute. This is typically a more advanced flute. However, you can purchase cork or rubber plugs to go in the holes to make it easier for beginners to close the keys. The other style of flute is called closed hole, and typically only beginners play on closed hole instruments. Another term that you're going to find is called offset G key or plateau model. What this means is it has a key that is set apart from the others to make it easier for small hands to reach. The other option is an inline G key. And again, that's what this one is. You can see all the keys are in a straight line. When I was growing up, all flutes were made like this, and more recently they started making the plateau model, which is easier to reach for small hands. I do not have a personal preference on either one of these. You may choose using your own comfort and advice from the music store. Next things to consider: beginner flutes are typically called silver plated. That means they are not solid silver or sterling silver, but they are usually nickel silver. They're not quite as dense as solid silver, and they are less expensive. And this is the material that beginner flutes typically are made from. More advanced level flutes, intermediate and above, are typically sterling silver or solid silver, and this is what this one is made out of. They are a little heavier, they are denser, and overall they make a much better sound. At the beginner level, I have no preference. You can choose nickel silver or silver plated, or if you want to invest more money in the solid silver, that's not a bad idea either. It really just depends on your budget. The last thing you're going to see that you'll need to make a decision on is C foot versus B foot. And I'll show you what that means. This flute on the end has 3 keys. This is called a B foot, and this is typically for intermediate to advanced flutes. Unfortunately, I don't have a C foot to show you, but C foot would not have this key. It would only have 2 keys on the end. And typically that's all that beginners need. The B foot gives you an extra note. It's a little bit harder to reach, and that's why typically it's not featured on beginner flutes. So again, if you want to invest money in a better flute that is solid silver and has a B foot, that's fine. And if you don't feel ready, you can get a nickel silver or silver plated flute that has a C foot. There are 2 other features that you may run into as you are looking at flutes. One feature is called a split E key, this is totally optional. I have never had a split E key on any one of my flutes. It really only helps one or two notes come out a little bit more easily on the flute without squeaking. But again, I have never had one, so it's optional. It certainly can't hurt, but it's not necessary. And then another key is called the C sharp trill key. This is also optional and is not usually featured on beginner flutes. And that's just basically an extra key that you'll find on very, very advanced flutes. And it helps facilitate some fast playing. Unfortunately, I don't have a C sharp trill key on this flute. I have it on my other flute, which I will show you in a future lesson. So those are all the things that I can think of for you purchasing a new or used flute. Any questions that you may have, you may direct to the music store, the instrument dealer, or the band director. And between those three sources, you should be able to get answers. So good luck on your flute purchasing process. And I look forward to seeing you at the next lesson, which is when we start to practice putting together the instrument. Thanks and have a great day.